perfect spot for that.
Thank you.
All in order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is this sign-up sheet circulating? And how about agendas? Does everybody have an agenda? Several copies up here.
Where's that sheet?
It's circulating. Here you go. We can.
Next on the agenda, discussion, transportation issue with Thornton Academy Hazard Master. They here? Yep. Yeah, please, if you could just identify yourself. Sure.
Good evening, my name is Rennie Menard, I'm headmaster at Thornton Academy.
Now, I recommended you attend the meeting tonight simply because the last meeting that we had, it was brought to our attention through the RSU that their policy under high school transportation, they were looking to change. I more or less wanted to initiate conversation with you through the Arundel Selectmen. You know, to begin talks, if they had reached out to you, what your feeling was on the policy change, if you had any at all, what you feel maybe the town of Arundel should be doing. So I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I think just to put it in a little timeline, I think it was shortly after the RSU 21 school board had a meeting, a public meeting, and I believe it was a first reading of their proposal to change the transportation policy. Jason reached out to me. I believe it was the day after the meeting, the superintendent, RSU 21 superintendent Katie Hawes and I spoke, and we decided to get together and talk about what those options might be if the RSU 21 school board would go forward with a policy change. Let's sit down and talk about how we may be able to work out something. Since then, the superintendent had to cancel the meeting, and shortly thereafter, we received the same letter from their school attorneys regarding school choice as everybody else. And it's my understanding from the letter, public letter, and I certainly don't want to speak for the board, but from the letter that I've seen, it appears that they've canceled their February 24th policy committee meeting. And I think the statement in the letter said that they were going to postpone the conversation around transportation to another date. So the superintendent and I have not talked. I think that happened perhaps about a week ago. It was right at the end, right before school vacation. So other than that, I don't know any more about the proposed transportation policy change than any of you here. Certainly from our perspective, you ask what we would like to see happen. Well, we certainly would like to see transportation stay in place for those Arundel students who choose to attend Thornton Academy Middle School and the high school.
Katie is here? Katie, can you come forward? As you know, a lot's transpired since we last met at, well, a few of us attended your last school board meeting. And it was, I guess to say the least, an eye-opener that talks had kind of started with you about changing the policy. And then it kind of led into contract negotiation was coming to an end, or the contract was coming to an end. And it seemed as if in a week, it went from high school transportation policy being changed to now us receiving a letter from Drummond and Woodson with school choice now on the table. Can you touch on that a little bit? Where did that come from, I guess? And why did it go from bus transportation right into middle school choice?
As part of the conversations around transportation for middle and high school students, we decided that we really needed our attorneys to look at the full implications of that contract expiring. We needed to fully understand what that meant in terms of, I think there was some surprise on the part of Thornton and on the part of many people that we would no longer be obligated to provide transportation for middle school students. And so because there was some surprise around that, we needed people to look at the full implications of that contract. And when they did that, they came to the realization that there was not choice before consolidation and therefore not choice after consolidation. So that's how that came about.
I know you can't speak for the board, but do you have any idea where this is going or what?
I can't speak for the board, and actually I've been clear with Keith about that. I'm not sure that I can tell you much more than you know. The board has not had a chance to discuss this in a public meeting, and they will do so on March 7th. So until then, you have the information we have, and new information from the Department of Ed that came out this afternoon that is also now on our website from their attorney. So you have what we have at this point, and until our board has a chance to discuss this publicly, we don't, I don't know what more I can offer to you tonight.
Are you still moving ahead with the policy meeting on the 24th, is it 25th?
We're not, we were clear about canceling that. So we are moving forward with the policy meeting, but we are going to focus on other policies that we have in front of us. And that is because we need to discuss this on March 7th as a full board before we're going to look at that policy around high school transportation.
Katie, are you still going to be meeting with Mr. Menard to see if you can work something out?
Relative to transportation? I'm not sure. I don't know what our board will decide to do on March 7th when they talk about that.
What's the new info that came out? You said you had new info that came out today?
Yeah, I sent that along to Keith, and also it's posted on our website. The department, I believe Keith asked for an opinion from the commissioner about the opinion that we got from Drummond Woodson, and so they worked through that with their attorneys, and Keith probably can speak to that. I don't have a copy of it in front of me. But their finding is essentially the same as our finding, and so that came from Acting Deputy Commissioner Susan Bowden this afternoon.
What he's expressing is correct. I had reached out, there was a series of emails that had been circulated in 2010 that may have provided some information to the general public that school choice for mid-school students from Arundel was still an issue that was optional. And so I reached out to the Department of Education, and Suzanne Bowden, she got back to me today, concurred with the opinion that was provided to us by Drummond and Woodson, that the choice does not apply to middle school students, but it does apply to high school students, as it always has. And that was part of the reorganization plan that was approved when the town voted upon it. So, just trying to tie some loops together is what I asked.
So when there was discussions going on a few years ago about school choice, I don't remember where and how we were told, but we were told that when the contract ends, we would continue to have school choice. Where did that came from? And how is that documented? Is that just hearsay, or, I mean, there's been a discussion for quite a while now that once the contract is done, middle school will still have choice. So where did that come from? Where's that documented? Do we know?
It's not part of the reorganization plan that.
So did somebody just pull it out of thin air and said, hey,
We believed before the arbitration, we believed that Arundel Middle Schoolers had choice, which is why we were saying they have choice, they can go to MSK or they can go to TAMS. And Thornton said, no, they don't have choice, they have an exclusive contract. And the arbitrator agreed and ruled that yes, the contract was exclusive. And so for the last several years, 7 years, they have been attending exclusively Thornton. That arbitrator's ruling is binding in that case.
Yeah, but there was something, Katie, somewhere that somebody said that once the contract is done, there will still be middle school choice for the Arundel students.
Dan, I think a lot of people were under that impression. I don't know that there's anything official about, I mean, you've been here longer than I have.
Yeah, I just remember, I don't remember, you know, there's been a lot of conversation, and if anybody knows that it's written somewheres, please speak up, but, you know, that's been our assumption.
You'd have to go back to the hearings. You'd have to go back to the withdrawal hearings and the meetings, the public hearings that they had in which that was stated.
What?
I thought it was part of the legal ruling when Tom Academy, when the court and Tom Academy got the ruling that it was exclusive over there. I don't know why, but I thought it was part of that legal ruling.
The arbitrator's ruling is available on our website and was part of the documentation supporting the Drummond-Whitson opinion.
So, transportation aside, because the contract ends next year, we're expected to uproot the kids that are at TAMS and force them to go into RSU 21.
Again, Dan, I don't know because our board hasn't had a chance to talk about this in a public meeting yet. And so those are the questions that we expect to toss around on March 7th. I can't speak to that one way or the other.
Going back to Renee, please. Are you following up, like the Thornton trustees, have you now taken the Drummond and Woodson interpretation, I'll
Sure.
say?
Yeah.
Are you getting your own?
Absolutely, we've talked to our attorneys, and again, this doesn't happen overnight. They're looking at this, and at this point, they're confident that the law has not changed. The law that talks about opportunities that existed before the formation of the RSU will be in effect. There is correspondence with former Commissioner Jim Ryer stating that that was his opinion. I believe there's other correspondence that's out there from around the area of 2010 from other folks at the DOE stating that that is their interpretation of this. And, you know, I think this is not the first time Ms. Haas spoke about the arbitration, and I think back in 2010 there was a disagreement about the interpretation of the language in the contract, and as she stated, we went through legal arbitration, and the arbitrator ruled in our favor. And so, if need be, we'll look at, our attorneys are going to spend some time looking at this, and again, we have a different interpretation of the law. Our interpretation of the law is the same that I think everybody agreed to not that long ago. Again, I can't speak for the RSU, but I believe the RSU, the Thornton Academy, and the town of Arundel was under the clear impression that those opportunities, educational opportunities that existed before the formation of the RSU would be intact post the contract. So, again, we're looking at that, and we'll have a better sense of what our attorneys have to say on this issue shortly.
So in other words, nothing has been settled. I mean, everything is still in the working with the attorneys and discussions back and forth stage.
Well, again, I would say at this point, it's our position that nothing has changed. We haven't heard any legal opinion to state otherwise, and to be fair to the RSU, I don't think they've made a policy change yet. So as far as we're concerned, their transportation policy is still in effect, and that middle school age students have choice. But that's our position at this point. But we'll see if that if events transpire to don't impact those two issues.
So, I guess from my perspective, granted the lawyers are involved here, but, you know, it doesn't take time. Spring's here, summer's here, and then we're off of the school year. And, you know, to me, it's incumbent upon you and the RSU 21 board to work this issue out and figure out what's gonna happen to our middle school kids next year. Because I sure as heck don't wanna have to tell parents 2, 3 months from now, hey, your kids that have been going to TAMS can't go next year, and that's a huge uproot to some families, so, you know, I think it's incumbent.
Let me be clear, our position is the same, the law hasn't changed, and we firmly believe that Arundel students have that choice, and until we're told otherwise, that's our position, and we will do everything we can to continue to support those Arundel families who want to continue to exercise their choice to attend Thornton Academy. We've been there from the beginning, and we're here to continue to support the town of Arundel and those families who want to exercise their right to school choice.
Thanks.
Sure.
We're going to follow up with a public forum, which pretty much gives the public the opportunity to speak. I would ask just, Renee, if you guys could hang out, maybe listen to the public. Same with Katie. We've got an upcoming meeting. I think it would be nice if both parties listen to the public. Maybe there'll be some questions brought up. One thing I would ask is everybody that's going to speak, just try to do so through the podium. Identify yourself. Okay.
My name is Diane Robbins. I live in the town of Arundel. And at the time that we were doing the withdrawal process, I was actually a board of director of the RSU. It was discussed during many, many meetings, as well as during the withdrawal process, as well as during the public hearings, that they would continue to be choice. Now, I have to say, I was one of the happiest people in town knowing that the contract was going to end, because I knew that there were numerous families who wanted to send their children to Kennebunk. I don't fault them that. If that's where they want to send their children, I was happy that was going to happen. My issue is that I find it very hard to swallow that during a process such as withdrawal, that they would not have gone to their attorneys to make sure that that was correct. Instead, they wait till we don't withdraw, and now we've all voted on school bonds, leaving us in debt to decide that not only do they state that they're not going to let or their kids aren't going to go to Thornton Academy Middle School, and there's no transportation. That's real hard to swallow. It's hard for me to stand here knowing I sat on this board and believed what they said, that they would have school choice. But then when it came right down to it, there is no choice. And I'll go right back to what I said to you at the last Selectmens hearing that I went to, and that is, at this point, I have no faith nor trust left in the RSU 21 school board.
Good evening. My name is Noel Holmes, and I'm here to make a brief statement concerning the intentions of the RSU 21 to discontinue school bus transportation for Arundel students and also the removal of school choice, both of which are controlled by the RSU 21, as we know, and made up of 12 members, as we know, 6 from Kennebunk, 3 from Kennebunkport, and only 3 from Arundel. I also have 2 children, one here at MLA and one at Thornton Academy Middle School. And I'm here to share concerns on behalf of several families in this town. Excuse me. Arundel is a small town, and families are drawn to so they can raise their children. Many of the residents have lived in this town for generations, and others have transplanted here, like myself. In either case, if you ask why they chose Arundel and not many of their surrounding towns, many will tell you they moved here because of school choice and to send their children to. We've had choice of both Kennebunk and Thornton Academy High Schools, and as the Thornton Academy Middle School contract expires, we were also expecting a choice between TAMS and MSK, naturally. There are many issues that Arundel is facing with the RSU currently, as we know, and what is best for the education of the Arundel children. First and foremost, the RSU has not been upfront with their agenda and plans for the Arundel children, and is limiting time for us to act. Secondly, I'd like to make reference, on February 1st, the RSU 21 held a board meeting to discuss ending transportation for Arundel children attending, quote, out-of-district schools, and parents found out from social media on the day of the meeting. The RSU had ample time following their previous January meeting to notify the Arundel selectmen and the Arundel parents this issue would be up for discussion soon, but failed to do so. Most families rely on school bus transportation to get their child or children to school, and by ending that, those families will by proxy lose their choice. Furthermore, with the cut in transportation, what happens to the Arundel bus drivers that are involved? It's clear the impact on our town by such a motion from the RSU was not considered very heavily, in our opinion. Next, in this short timeline, on the morning of February 16th, some but not all Arundel residents received an email from the RSU that they had contacted the law firm of Drummond Woodson to find out if the RSU has authority to assign Arundel students to the middle school of the Kennebunks, or are they compelled to permit them to enroll in TAMS. Again, this came as a shock to many Arundel families. Moreover, we do not know when this discussion on that inquiry took place. Much of this contradicts what the RSU has stated in the past. In an article in York County Co-Star back in June of 2010, when other issues were raised for the arbitration, specifically titled RSU Board Votes to Terminate TAM's Contract. Based on the recent RSU letter, which we believe confirms the intent of the RSU board, in part, could use its votes to easily outnumber our Arundel 3 votes, that we carry to pass such a decision that affects so many in our town on the issue or even issues to come. I could quote directly from these articles, however, I'd like to keep focus on the hardened concerns and frustrations of us, which is the choice of our schools for our children, protecting our choice for future generations. We apparently have no significant local control on the education of Arundel children, and virtually no control of how the school budget funds are allocated either. As I'm speaking here this evening for other Arundel residents as well, we ask this board for the following: to work diligently and quickly to protect and preserve the right of school choice for all Arundel children. Excuse me. Review all options to ensure our families have now and indefinitely the choice and transportation to allow them to choose the best fit for their children's education. This includes the benefit of the town's withdrawal from the RSU, if that's an option. We ask that you send the residents of the town by mail a copy of the RSU letter along with the statement of your position in this matter, as some residents don't have access to email or internet. Also, going forward on these issues discussed this evening, request absolute transparency from the RSU, prompt and direct communication to the residents and taxpayers of this town so we can remain informed until a sound resolution can be achieved on the matter. And also, please exercise due diligence regarding whether you agree or disagree with this matter tonight. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Jack, back to you. You guys sit down.
Dorothy Gregoire, Arundel resident. I think the question that Dan had with where we had the idea, I think it was Jim Meyer, the DOE. I think there was emails that was him and his interpretation of the law of choice. I want to back up because this all kind of transpired in the last 2 weeks. It came across as transportation, and then bam, as much as anyone else, no longer having middle school choice. On the transportation issue, Jason, I would really like, if you could, I don't think I can address it, possibly get a timeline. I think it's really important with the transportation, how this came about, because it does seem kind of strange that it all happened at once. Attorney looks into it. Why did that come to play? Was it strictly, I'm looking at transportation, let's go to our lawyers from it. When was TA brought into the mix? Is there any way that you could ask that question to both Katie and TA, and just, I really think it's important to get a timeline. I want to know the first they heard about it, or they discussed the transportation on the school board, and when they contacted Thornton Academy. Thank you.
Jeff?
Jack Reed, Sorrento. First, a clarification, if I may. There is indeed documentation that speaks to middle school choice. If you go back and look at the arbitration agreement, there's a phrase or a sentence in there that specifically speaks to the fact that if a buyout were to occur during the period of the 10-year contract, that there would indeed be continued school choice for the students during that period. Go back and look at it. That's where we all got that language. Secondly, this is an important happening. There are a lot of parents affected, and there needs to be a solution. If we talk about it strictly from a busing standpoint, it's really an argument between two school districts. It really has, if you will, nothing to do with Arundel, except that it affects a lot of kids. The two school districts simply need to get together and work out what is a business problem. It's all about money, that's all, and that's solvable. There are buses, the point that was made earlier, and there are drivers. It's a question of who compensates. It can be handled that simply from a busing standpoint. Now, what happens after the contract is up is a more challenging issue. But here too, there are two school districts. We have vying legal opinions. It's going to work itself out if the two parties get together and make it happen. It has to happen. The buses will roll, in my opinion, come September. It's going to happen. And every kid in Arundel will have a school to go to. There may be happiness and unhappiness depending on what is negotiated. But this is a solvable problem. And I would expect the two school units to get together quickly and have at it. Thank you.
Can I just ask where the Arundel lawyers stand on this?
I'm not sure, has this been passed along to you?
Yeah, we haven't received an opinion. You are.
Anything else from the public?
I was hoping for, is Katie still here?
Yeah.
I was hoping for a timeline to transpire tonight.
Oh, okay.
I was hoping for.
Katie, is that something you can give us tonight? Sorry, Deb.
That's okay.
So I can't give you exact dates, although I can tell you that a few weeks before the policy committee looked at the transportation policy, I did speak with Rennie by phone and alerted him that this may be coming, that this was very likely coming, and suggested that before we raise people's anxiety, that he talk with his board about what the solution would be so that we could send a joint letter that would come from both of us that would say, RSU 21 has decided whatever with transportation, and Thornton is prepared to do whatever in response. So here's the problem, here's the solution, we've worked together on this. It was my understanding that he agreed that we did not want to raise the alarms, he agreed that we needed to find a solution, roll the problem out with the solution. This is my 20th year in this business, and those are conversations that you have with other school administrators, whether you know them or not. And those are things that once you've agreed to, you either move forward with the plan, or you call the person back and say, change your plans. I did not hear anything more from him and believed that he was working on his end. And then I began to hear from parents that, I don't know. I don't know how that all came about on Thornton's end. I do know that my intent was not to lack transparency, but rather to try to come out with a problem and a solution together. And that is not the way it happened, so for that I apologize.
Now, Katie, it seems like the transportation thing is a done deal now that the school choice issue has come to the table. So
I don't believe so, Jason. No, I don't think so. Nope, I don't. Because we...
Just speaking on a letter that we received from you that the transportation has been put on hold.
Correct. The transportation policy discussion has been put on hold because we have to look at this larger issue as a board and figure out what that means. So we know that high school students will have had choice before the contract expires. They will continue to have choice. We know that we have some Arundel students sitting at Thornton Academy Middle School currently who would be 7th or 8th graders there next year. We know we have 5th graders here and below. And so those are things that our board needs to look at fully and then figure out what do we do about that, and what does that then mean for things like transportation and other things that we provide under that contract, special education, those kinds of things. So no, I do not believe that anything's a done deal with this new information. I believe that our board needs to look at it on March 7th. That's why this conversation feels a little premature, actually, because I don't feel that I can offer you a whole lot until the board has taken a look at it.
Anything else from the public?
Can we get TA's response to that same, I just don't think we heard from TA's timeline on the transportation piece, and I think it's really important.
With regard to the timeline, I think it's very similar in terms of our interpretation of the timeline and how the conversation went. I do recall sharing with Ms. Foss that certainly our board, we don't set RSU 21 policy. We're not involved in the process, and that ultimately whatever their board is going to do, whether or not they provide transportation to the students in your community is the decision of the board. And whatever happens from that point on, then we will react accordingly. But I don't think it's our position to weigh in on what I can tell you personally, obviously we'd love to see transportation continue. I think it's important that people understand we don't receive any state subsidy for transportation, as do public schools. And so as I said earlier, our position is the board has to own this policy, RSU 21, make a decision, and if they do, we did talk about if they were to go forward, I think there was an understanding that it's likely to go in that direction. So okay, if that is the case, then what do we do? But at that point, I think the ball is in their court. And as I said earlier, once they make a decision on what they want to do with their policy, then we will do whatever we can within our authority or our ability to help support the kids who want to continue to come to TA. But at this point, we don't know what that policy, if the policy stays in effect, or if it changes.
Listen, I just feel that negotiations do not start with, let them make a decision and come to me. Tell me if I'm wrong. Did I not understand that he was approached under a superintendent's conversation to negotiate, and instead of answering the district back that I'm not going to negotiate, it's on your court. We just never, all of a sudden parents started hearing about it.
Thought, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was a meeting scheduled to meet.
There was a meeting
One of the
scheduled
parties canceled,
for,
maybe?
there was a meeting for, I don't recall the date.
Friday, before
Friday.
vacation.
So the Friday before vacation, we intended to, actually, we're gonna meet in my office with the business manager from the RSU and the business manager from Thornton Academy and talk about if this policy goes forward. I believe the superintendent said to me informally, there were things up in the air still, mentioned a possibility of maybe transporting students to one, I don't want to speak for you, but to one central location. Those things hadn't been decided yet, so we said, let's sit down and talk, and then, for whatever reason, Ms. Hawes had to cancel the meeting, and that's the way it ends right now.
Right, and that's fine. I just felt that it wasn't working together, and I think that's so important.
Jack Reeds again, still from Arundel. A clarification. Mrs. Robbins earlier said at the end of her presentation that there was no choice. I would disagree with that, and I'd like to tell you why. 10 years ago, prior to the start of this contract, high school, the students in Arundel had choice beginning at high school, 9th grade. Correct? Everybody agree? Okay. For this 10-year period, that changed, and choice then began at the 6th grade. If this ends,
There was no choice. The contract was TAM's.
well, I'm sorry, that, yes, it was an exclusive contract, there was no choice. At the end of the contract here, if Dr. Hawes is correct in the interpretation of the law, choice would then revert back or up to the 9th grade. There would indeed be choice. And everybody who wants to go to the high school they want to go to will have that opportunity. So I would argue that that is choice.
I don't think the high school is in question here, Jack. I think the question is the middle school kids. We all know that there's choice for high
The
school. That
statement
will
was
continue
there was
on.
no choice, sir. And I'm just clarifying that indeed it is a matter of deferred gratification, if you will. Thank you.
Just so I can be perfectly clear, when I was discussing what happened at the hearings, when we were determining whether or not we were going to withdraw from RSU 21, the statements and the literature that went out, as well as probably some of the letters to the editors, stated that for middle school, the kids would remain having choice. And I don't think I was the only one in the room that heard that. Yes, they continue to have choice for high school. That's never been in question, and I don't think that can be in question, because I think the only one that can change that would be the town would have to vote it. But my issue is that during this very sensitive time, when we're trying to decide whether or not we withdraw or not, due diligence was not done. But they waited until the contract was done. And I believe if you check the agenda for the night that we went on the school busing issue, I think there was an executive session on that night. I would be at all surprised if that wasn't the executive session that they discussed the school contract terming, and it was the RSU's choices at that point. But my real big issue is that when we were determining whether or not to withdraw, statements were made at meetings that the middle school students would continue to have choice after the contract ended. And I'll be clear, that was made about middle school students as well as high school students. That's where I have issue today, because now that we chose not to withdraw, now that we've voted on bonds to repair schools, now at the 11th hour, and regardless on what TA wants to do, we still continue to pay taxes to this RSU. We still continue to get bus subsidies. That all goes to the RSU. So we can continue to pay taxes, but they're not going to bus our students. And I think that for those of you who haven't seen it, if you go back and look at that meeting from that night and listen to some of the things that were said about the town and the school and choice, it's very telling. And I'm very concerned about what's happening. And like I said, I have no issue with the people who are finally going to get the choice to go to Kennebunk. I think it's great. But I think that at this point, to tell parents at the last minute, nope, you don't have choice anymore after votes were done, that's where I have a problem. Thank you.
Sorry.
My name is Amy Rush. I'm a resident of Arundel. And I just wanted to speak as a parent who has a 6th grader and a 7th grader at TAMS right now. So my children don't know what's happening, where they're going to go to school. I fought for this RSU. I fought for us to not withdraw. And I still chose, well, I didn't choose. I had to send my kids to TAMS. And to be told at this point that I might have to take them out of TAMS where they've been, my oldest has been there for 2 years, to go to a whole different system and to adjust to a whole different schedule. I also have a special needs student, so you're gonna uproot him and put him someplace different. I am very, very upset. I'm very upset that I had to find about this on Facebook, and I'm trying not to shake, but I just, this is ridiculous, and it's an epic fail, and that's all I want to say.
My name is Mike Woods. I moved to this town about 10 years ago. Love it. Great area. Love Kennebunk. Love Thornton. Great people, both places. My concern is really, for the taxpayers, what we have to deal with as people. My kids who are going to this school, who we loved. My son's going to high school at Thornton. My daughter who's possibly going to TAMS in the fall. The big thing is the timing. When are we going to know as parents? Are we just going to get this sprung on us last minute, or hopefully on the March 7th meeting they discuss, hey, maybe we need to open a committee up, discuss this, prolong this a little bit, let's review this, instead of just throwing, when I get a letter from an attorney, I'm in business for myself, it's usually not a good sign. So when it came across my email, I was a little taken aback by it. So I think the taxpayers of Arundel who don't have kids, as well as the people who do have kids, should know what's going on. They should know how their taxes might be affected by if a withdrawal happens or if it doesn't. RSUs are great in some areas, maybe not great in others. But I think an investigation or a committee should be formed to find out what's good for the town of Arundel, the town of Kennebunk, and the people in this area. Not make hasty decisions and throwing emails out like that. And it should be very well publicly known when things are happening like this. And that's all I really have to say until we know further. Thank you.
Are you stepping up?
Yeah, is that okay?
My name is Lori Webb. We've got have children in TAMS in the 7th grade and a sophomore in high school. The point I just want to make sure everyone understands is that Thornton Academy doesn't have buses to bus children. The students that go to Thornton from Dayton and the students that go in soccer, those towns bus the children. So it's not, it was said that this was an issue between 2 school departments. It's really not, because Thornton doesn't have buses. So, it's, up to us as members of the RSU really to work this thing out. It's, Thornton's here to support us as they have since day one when we needed a middle school, and you know, nobody else wanted us. So they're stepping up, they're here to support us. The other point I wanted to make as well is just to emphasize, as others have said, that it was the understanding of the general public that after the contract was done, we will still have middle school choice. I think that was the RSU's understanding, otherwise middle school parents would not have gotten a letter saying, which school are you gonna choose for your children? So, and again, you know what, I mean, most of us who are supporting and want to continue to send our kids to Thornton, we are very happy that those who want to send them to Kennebunk will still have that choice, and we want that to continue.
I'm Sam Hall from Rundle. I don't have a kid in school. This is a mess. A god-awful mess. But I want to take heart from what Jack had said, and Dr. Hawes too, I think, and others. This all revolves around two things. One is money, obviously, but the second is kids' lives. And I just have to believe there's a way that the school district and Thornton Academy can reason together with those objectives in mind to protect the integrity and the future of the children that are involved here. Emotions run really high, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, and I'm aware of it. I was deeply involved with the withdrawal decision that took place for 3 years ago. The word withdrawal gets bandied around now. What's withdraw? I know that's coming up later. That is a horrific decision. This town has been rent, in my experience here, since I moved in 2008. It's been rent with friction and anger and suspicion, largely over this school issue. I have to believe that the two school boards working with intent to solve the problem of taking care of the kids can find a way to make this transportation and to make the future of the kids who are now in Thornton being able to continue in Thornton. In some way, you transferring your money, maybe Arundel is involved with helping subsidize this, I don't know what the answer is. But there's got to be a way to make it happen without taking the nuclear option of going through the withdrawal fight again. It will tear this town apart as it did the last time, and we need to come together, not find ways to pull us apart. Thank you.
So no, I have grandchildren in the system, but I have to agree with Sam. I don't want to see this town torn apart. It does no good for community. It doesn't build community. I think it really, if there was an issue as far as legal opinions, one way or the other, both ways were wrong, I really think it behooves the RSU directors and the boards from Thornton Academy to work this out, maybe some kind of a phase-out plan where, you know, let's continue it as a choice for a while. I think eventually you're going to see that the little ones are probably going to be all swinging towards Kennebunk. It's closer. You might have a couple that will continue with TAMS, but I think in the long run, if it's phased out gradually, I think, you know, it would solve a lot of issues if the directors could see that option to work it out. I don't know if we have to assume something. Maybe we could, if the bus routes are picking up all the kids, bring them to one location, and the town buys a bus and takes them to Thornton. There's got to be options to be working this out together. I was very disappointed in an email that went out to Thornton parents saying to sign a petition. I hate to see any district, whether it's the administration from Thornton or the RSU, directors should be staying out of politics. I think it would hurt this town tremendously to do the withdrawal. I think as much as you say you have choice, you have choice. If it can get phased out, I think that would be a wonderful option. Withdrawal will kill the community, kill our seniors. It's just, you know, we think about having control. You have no control whether you do the high school in Kennebunk or Thornton. Thornton's a private school. You're not going to tell them what to do for a curriculum, and you're only going to pay the bill for the number of students you have. the number of middle school students you have. You're going to pay the bill for your teachers who are union and your buses that are union. So what control are you going to have? You're going to hurt the K through 5 school because you're going to make all the budget cuts there, and building maintenance, which we know we have done over the last 25 years. Whenever we had budgets and we were running Mildred L. Day School ourselves, we always kept saying, let's keep it flat, let's not bring the taxes up. So we would cut the poor K through 5 program, and no maintenance on the building, let's just let it fall apart, and this is where we are at the situation we're at. So please, I mean, this whole withdrawal thing, I'd rather see an increase in our taxes a little bit to be able to resolve this issue somehow so that the kids can continue having a choice and phase it out gradually. I'm sure we could work something out, but you can't just say, the law says this. Yeah, it does say that, but the law also said this and made a mistake a while ago in the interpretation, and now it's saying a totally different thing. Let's find a middle ground and let's phase it out gradually, you know, and not hurt each other.
What are you talking about, phase out gradually?
Phase out choice.
No, and let you know, for a while, as well as my kids when they were there, for a while everybody was going to you know, like there was a halfway split between, like most of the kids for a while were going to Biddeford, then they were going to like the different high schools. It gets to the point where I think you'll see that between all the RSU programs where you find the first, second, third graders now are doing joint programs with Kennebunk and Kennebunkport students as part of the RSU.
You're saying phase out Thornton.
No, I'm saying it will phase itself out. I'm just saying that these kids are being brought up as an RSU, and they're going to see each other in sports and in activities, and they're going to want to follow through with their friends from the RSU. And that's what I think is going to happen in the future. Even if you allow choice, it's going to happen. Thank you.
Hi, Paul Raymond. I have a 5th grader looking forward to going to TAMS next year, and I have a junior at Thornton Academy right now. I have to respectfully disagree with Simone, though, because you have to look at what's happened, what's taken place. In 2012, we attempted to withdraw. At the last part of that withdrawal, a lot of people changed their minds about withdrawing because they were told that we would have choice. And they said, okay, as long as we ended up having choice at the end of this, then we were fine with the RSU doing what they did. Since then, though, 25 schools have withdrawn from their RSUs, similar in size to our towns, and they're all successful and thriving. They're all doing very well. They have some issues, but they are doing very well. And I still think that that's what it is. If we're talking about we want to be able to control what's going on, we do it. And as far as you say about our school being in disrepair, yes, we all know that was the way it was before. But I think as parents, we're going to be more positive and more directive and focused on doing that. And making sure that we take care of our local school so that we can further our kids to go to the next level. And then when they get to the 5th grade, they have that choice to do whatever they want to do. And that's why, in the end, when this is all said and done, the RSU and Thornton Academy can talk all they want, but ultimately, as a town, the only way we're going to get control of this is if we do withdraw. And I just think that that's because then we can go back to the table and say, this is how we want to do it. If the RSU wants to participate with us, they can find ways. We can do joint contracts, we can lower expenses, we can do all kinds of things. That's what other towns are doing, and that's why I truly, truly believe that withdrawal is the best way for this town to go at this point. That's my opinion.
Mike Woods again. I was at that withdrawal meeting. Had nothing to do with TA. It was a bunch of parents that got together. I have the same questions for the people who don't want to withdraw. You know, tax base, seniors, what's it going to do for the town? I have the same questions on the RSU and what's it going to help if we stay with the RSU. once again, this is on us as people to decide what has to be done. Simone, I believe you had a lot of good points, but at what point will they decide in the RSU that ML Day is no longer a suitable school for our kids to house and they move them all to Kennybrook? Because they don't want to shut down one of their elementary schools.
Hi, my name is Linda Zook, and I really can't believe we're at this point again, having these same conversations. Paul, it's all great there, but where are we going to get the money to do that? We couldn't do it before, we're not.
You have to look at the numbers. Look at the numbers.
We've already looked at them.
No, don't go.
Oh my God. I did forget my glasses. I did, I mean, Simone said it perfectly. Basically, everything that I had written down to say was basically the same thing. I don't think there's anybody here, any of the supporters from the RSU agrees with what's going on right now. We all knew that we had choice. We all want choice for the middle school students. There's nobody that disputes that. But to jump into withdrawal before we even got, I mean, we have the lawyer from the RSU made a point. TAMS hasn't even had their lawyer look at the stuff. Our lawyers haven't looked at the stuff. But we're going to sign a petition to withdraw from the RSU before we even have a reading on it. Nothing's been decided. Nothing. I just, honestly, it was just sitting back waiting for something to rile up this town to send that petition through. And it was wrong. And it's a disservice and irresponsible to the taxpayers of this town. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment on the condition of the school. And while I can't disagree that the school needed repairs and needs repairs, I will say this, that the other schools within the RSU, such as the high school, didn't get any better attention than this school got. Which is why it cost, what, $40, $50 million to repair the high school, in which we pay part of that too. We're all guilty of doing it. You only have so much money in the pot. And sometimes you just don't have a choice. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. But what I'm saying is that our town is not the only town that had to make those decisions. That there were other schools within the RSU, Kennebunkport, it's the same way. I think every school has had to make a choice. And I don't think that those choices are just because of the towns. I think those choices are because a mandate sent down from Augusta with no funding behind them. We all had to vote on whether or not we wanted schools funded at 55%. Geez, that passed overwhelmingly. Have we ever seen it happen? No. It's not just the towns. The towns can't carry it all. If the state wants to dictate what the schools are going to do, what they have to have, what grades they have to have, what services they have to have, they also have to take part in it too. You know, it's amazing that we can spend some money on some of the most foolish things you've ever seen in the world for Augusta. But when it comes to schools, they're never funded to that 55%. I mean, we're not even talking fund them to 100%. We can't fund them to 55%. So I can't fault the taxpayers in the little towns. I can't fault them in Arundel. I can't fault them in Kennebunkport, and I can't fault them in Kennebunk. We all have the same problem, and that is that things are not funded up to snuff. We can't control all of that. We can vote it, but it doesn't mean they're going to listen to us. They do whatever they damn well please. But you can't fault just this town for having a school in disrepair. And it wasn't just this town. If you look at the RSU, within, what, 5 or 6 schools, you had 3 schools that had to have major renovations. It doesn't happen overnight. That happened over a long period of time. And it all happened from the same one thing, and that is the state doesn't fund their part.
Anybody else? last chance. All right, moving on. Close the public forum. You guys want to take a 5-minute recess? 10-minute recess? Yeah? No? No? Move on? Approve the minutes of February 8th.
To show them that we're serious.
I know this.
Oh, that's because you bought us all hard copies. Oh,
Still have a meeting in session here. So anybody who doesn't want to continue to join the meeting. If not, you're going to have to keep it down. Start with you right there. So we have a motion and a second to accept February 8th. All in favor? February 9th. Second. Second one. All in favor? Can't hear it. What's that?
Nobody can hear it.
Moving close.
Better? Oh, boy. All right, committee reports. Budget Board, 223.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the board will be meeting with the Budget Board and Board of Selectmen tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. At that meeting, you'll be going over the fire department's budgets, all three of them, along with the general assistance and social service agencies at that time. So that'll be on the agenda.
Followed by Planning Board meeting, public hearing, February 25th, 7 p.m. MLA.
Yes.
That's in regards to the new formatting
Of the land use ordinance.
The public hearing. Yeah.
And then as discussed before, RSU 21 Directors Meeting on Thursday the 25th, 7 p.m. KES. And then we have a MLD school construction groundbreaking, March 8th at 1:30, with a snow date of 3:10.
Be out there in shorts.
Yeah. I hope so. Mr. Manager.
Yes, just briefly, I had sent to you all an email reference to the cost analysis that had been provided back to me by Sebago Technics in reference to a further review of two properties that we're looking at for consideration for a new town hall location. I didn't hear any strong objections to that, so I'll go ahead and sign that on those two properties. As you know, we have one other property we're looking at, and the owner of that property will be providing you the same information as Selectmens Meetingn, so you'll have a complete financial picture at that point, hopefully to make some informed decisions. Board of Assessment Review, it appears that we're having a little more activity there, so both the assessor and I have put together some rules and regulations for the board to work under and to provide some parameters to the applicants in order to provide us information so we can conduct an appropriate hearing. Those rules and regs are there. If you see anything in there that we need to modify or change, just let us know. It's certainly a work in progress, but we feel pretty confident it's pretty good at this point.
Who needs to adopt it?
Excuse me?
Who needs to adopt it? Do we or the Board of Assessment Review?
I believe it would be the Board of Assessment Review.
Right. These are their bylaws.
Correct. You know, obviously, I'd like to have you weigh in if you have any comments. And finally, the job descriptions are pretty well wrapped up. I would assume by the end of this month they'll be done, and then we'll be bringing those forward. So you can just take a look at them, along with sharing them with the appropriate department heads, so we make sure we capture everything that our employees are doing. We don't have right now.
Hydrant placement, the one between DMR Drive and Southern Maine Marine.
That is correct. I just wanted to highlight it. I've been in contact with Norton Labby. We've given them the go-ahead to place that hydrant. If you're traveling up Route 1, you'll see the location is between Southern Maine Marine and DMR Drive. It's got a yellow, a blue stake in the ground there where they're going to be located. Unless I hear strong objections from the board, I think that's an appropriate location. I did, reach out to the fire department as well to weigh in if they had any thoughts upon it, and they thought it was an appropriate location as well. So, unless I hear objections, we'll continue to move forward. And finally, on the deferred compensation discussions we've been having, I sent you another email, and I'm withdrawing my recommendation based on what I was proposing. As we did an analysis of our employees, we have 15 full-time employees right now. Out of the 15, we have 13 that are participating in the deferred compensation retirement program. Most of them are at the high end, so the 6% contribution on their annual salary that the board's making will continue to be made. I believe some are a little higher, but with the exception of a couple people, one who's not eligible yet because their 6-month probationary period is not up, and the other one who has chosen not to, I think it's a moot point at this point.
All right, that's it for old business. Moving on, new business. Submittal of petition for withdrawal from RSU 21.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received, the clerk received several petitions that were signed, and she can go into the details as to what they were and how many there were. The issue that was raised when I reviewed the petitions was that there was a few of them that had been signed and collected, some in November of 2014, and then others that were signed and collected in April of 2015 and June of 2015. So, as well as the final selection or signatures that were collected in February of 2016 on the request to withdraw from the RSU. I had some serious reservations on the oldest ones with regard to staleness, whether or not the intent of the folks that signed those petitions back in, for me, the oldest would be, I think, November of 2014, whether the intent that they signed it was still outstanding as they were looking at this new issue that we've discussed a little bit tonight. I have yet to receive some information from MMA. They sort of take a neutral position. I provided to you what they say in terms of staleness, to perhaps encourage the petitioners to go back out and see if they can collect some additional petitions to make the amount they need. And then I've asked our attorney, town attorney, to take a look at the staleness issue as well. The thing that always comes back to me, even though we had some old ones, is the fundamental position that we all, I think, appreciate, and that's the fact that people can petition to have some for redress and to discuss issues that need to be addressed. So I'm cognizant and mindful of that, but I'm just a little worried about those late ones. But it would be my view at this point to postpone any action upon the petition until we have a little bit more information in terms of the staleness piece. But I think in a couple of weeks we'd be able to wrap that up and have you folks make a decision as to how you wish to move forward with that petition that have been presented.
So our next meeting is what, March?
It would be March 14th, and for us it would be after the March 7th meeting that the RSU board would be discussing a lot of these issues. It will provide, maybe, I'm not sure who is the general circulator of petitions. They may have some opportunity to get some more signatures and make that a moot point. We'll have some opinion from our attorney by the 14th. So you'll have hopefully all the information that we need for you to make an informed decision as to what you feel you should be doing with those.
Will you supplement this petition with more current signatures still?
That would be up to you to not completely throw out the petition. If you feel that the old signatures are not valid, you can extend that period for a certain amount of time if you'd like to.
We would have to determine at what date the staleness, right? I mean, we would have to make a determination in 2015, is it, you know, I mean, I think for the folks that want to push this petition, we need to give them some sort of direction on that, right?
But it was just a little cautious for us in the office. And when Simone started looking at it, there were a couple people that had left, and in one in particular, the gentleman was deceased. So those signatures obviously were rejected at this point. So I'm not quite sure if other people have the same feelings with their name appearing on those petitions as they did back in 2015.
Can I reach to the public now, and is the drive behind the petition still here? He or she?
Yes. From the original?
Yes.
I talked to, at the beginning of,
Have the microphone, you go to the mic, please.
Ann Langtang of Rondo. Back in 2014, I spoke, in the spring of 2014, I spoke with Jim Rear, and because me and another person wanted to get the withdrawal started again. I had asked him what we would have to do to go about doing it. He explained, get the petitions, take it to the town hall, have Simone look at it, which I did, and she said, everything was fine. She didn't know what she was supposed to be looking at. Then I asked him, is there a time limit of getting signatures? And he said no. So that's why because I was doing it by myself, collecting signatures. And because I wasn't doing it on work time, I was doing it on my own personal time, weekends, with me going to school and all that, so it took time to get signatures. And many of those signatures wanted to sign them more than once. So that's why, if we go back to them, they're just gonna sign it again, because they wanted to sign it more than once. So that's why the date is so long. But according to Jim Ray, he said there was no time limit.
This is the same Jim Ray who told us we had school
Yep.
choice, okay?
Yeah. talked to him, he said he was very familiar about the first withdrawal thing going on, so.
Can I just clarify, her statement was that I didn't know anything about this, but what it was she asked me if the wording was correct, and I did not want to give a legal opinion on the wording of the petition because that's not my job. The format was correct, but the wording has nothing to do, I'm not a lawyer and I could not advise her on that. I don't know if you want me to just give a breakdown so people understand what it is, but basically the petitioners that signed in this recently in February, there were 111 petition signers in February. The ones that were dated November of 2014, I'm not sure if one of them was an error, but it looked like there was one that said, two of them that said 2012, but it looks like 2000, it was probably just a typo, a writing error on their part. So there were 82 that were signed in November of 2014. There were 11 later on, there was a break, and then there were 11 that signed in April of 2015, and another that 35 that signed in June of 2015. So again, we were questioning the fact that was it the same issues that were out there in 2014 as the ones that in this February date. That's why we were looking at the dates on the petition. So if you add all of them up, there is a 239 signatures. Required was, the last gubernatorial was 1,984, which requires 198 signatures. So again, it depends on the staleness issue. If you don't count the 82 from 2014, that only puts it at, as I have my figures here. It would only give them 157 if you don't count those 2014, which are well over a year and then old. So that was the question on that. So that's totally up to, I guess, the legal aspect of it.
So you're 41 signatures short if we consider staleness 2014. Is that correct?
450.
Staleness considered 2014.
Why not add 50? That's a year later.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we need a date as what is considered staleness. I mean, either that, we find a date, or we count it all. I mean, certainly want to, due diligence and due process here, but I want to make sure that, yeah, 2014 is, because again, it's almost 2 years ago.
A couple are deceased, or one's deceased.
Like those have already been discounted,
They're
right?
discounted.
Those have already been discounted, but, we can probably all sit here and assume that those people that signed those in 2014 probably still would sign them today, but.
I want to see them signed today.
Yeah, it's not our position to assume, right? That's my point, right? So,
I would say that we should not accept 14 and 15. They should have fresh signatures. If the 14 and 15 people want to sign, I hope they do. But I don't think we should accept the old signatures.
But 2015 isn't that long ago.
People change.
It's enough time for people to change their mind.
People change their mind.
Everything changes.
For me.
We've seen that too many times.
It's February, right? Is that correct? It's February 2015?
No, it was April and June.
So this has all gone to the town attorney and the
Right,
town attorney.
what I would say is that you would postpone any definitive action on whether you're going to accept it until after you have an opinion from the attorney, and then you can make a decision as to what you want to do at that point.
And then that lets the RSU policy committee meet.
Yep.
Hopefully by then Tams meets.
Yep.
and it gives the petition drivers, if they want time to go gather more signatures from.
Correct.
I mean, they have the list of these folks, if they wanted to get more signatures, just so that if they've got everything, they can do that. It wouldn't hurt them to do that.
And exactly how many was it off if you took the 15s and 14s off?
111 that were in February.
It still doesn't tell me how many were missing.
87.
So, I mean, I'll go ahead and make a motion that, that we table this until we have further direction from the town attorney. I'll second that.
Any more discussion on that? Meeting 7 short. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, move on. Approval of 216 road postings.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you have a list in here of road postings that have been proposed by the Public Works Supervisor. I believe this is pretty well standard. I think there's some that are added. We're going to need some approval by you folks to move forward with what?
I don't know if there's any added. No, that's the same as mine. Yeah.
Take a motion, go ahead and
All in favor? Liquor license renewal, Dutch Elm.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you received a renewal license that has been reviewed by the public
You would know.
officials. And we will be seeking some approval on behalf of the applicant.
Move to approve.
It wasn't your application.
It's all just status quo, right?
Yeah, I have the approval of the code enforcement and the contract activity.
All in favor? Motion for the accounts payable. So move. Second. All those in favor? And we're going into executive session. Sorry, public, but everybody's gonna leave.
hold on, we gotta make a motion.
You were just fine.
I thought it was on their calendar.
It's Monday, so it would be the 29th.
I wanted to make sure that she
All right, I make a motion, we go into executive session, 1 MRSA 40560, consultation and update between the selectmen and the town attorney with regard to legal rights and duties in the matter between Du Bois Livestock and the town. Aye.
What's my time?
Motion been made, second. All those in favor?